A polygamous leader accused of abusing child brides.
How old are you?
14.
How old are you? 11? How old are you? 12?
A prophet with followers in multiple states.
These allegations are extremely troubling.
The charges against Samuel Bateman.
We know what's going on here.
All too familiar for the people of Colorado City, Arizona.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for this 12 News special report, A Prophet, a Predator. I'm Mark Curtis.
And I'm Kadiba Devine. Right now, a self-proclaimed prophet and FLDS leader is facing federal charges for abusing at least 10 girls, the youngest just 9 years old.
Samuel Bateman was arrested in 2022 when he was driving a trailer near Flagstaff, and witnesses could see small hands were sticking out of the back. Investigators found 3 young girls inside wearing wedding rings.
12 News journalist Chase Golightly has been following the criminal case against Bateman since the initial arrest and traveled to Colorado City, where prosecutors say Bateman amassed more than 20 wives living together in a compound. Chase?
Bateman is facing more than 50 charges for child abuse, child pornography, and other crimes. And he's not alone. After his initial arrest in 2022, his child brides were taken into custody by the Department of Child Safety. But now prosecutors say some of the adult wives kidnapped the girls. Court paperwork says the women tried to take the girls to Washington State, where they were caught, and now some of Bateman's adult wives and even parents of some of those girls are facing charges with him, all in federal court. And if all that sounds familiar to you, it's because Bateman isn't the first man accused of these kinds of crimes. In fact, he's a self-proclaimed follower of one of the most notorious cult leaders in the 21st century, Warren Jeffs. Bateman building his own compound not far from Jeff's former residence in Colorado City, Arizona. That's where our team at 12 News has traveled again and again over the years to understand how something like this can happen. And I went back earlier this year.
Heading into Short Creek Valley, you can't deny the breathtaking scenery.
Our mountains are beautiful and our canyons are wonderful.
But it's the history and mystery of Colorado City, Arizona, and Hilldale, Utah that draws people.
It's always been such a curiosity. Don't go out there. They're weird. They're polygamists.
A place where some pronounce themselves prophets.
Most of the time, people just claim it, but to get people to follow them is a different story.
Brielle Decker knows all too well about those who come to power in the church.
I was the 65th wife of Warren Jeffs.
Warren Jeffs, a man who became the FLDS prophet in the early 2000s, with at least 78 wives, including minors, until his arrest and eventual conviction.
Do you know anyone who did say no to him?
No.
Now, this town is being forced to reckon with another ruthless prophet. In 2019, Samuel Bateman, a product of this community, claimed Jeffs called him to lead the church.
When Sam Bateman popped up being the prophet, I was concerned all along because he claimed to follow Warren.
According to court documents, Bateman referred to Jeffs as Uncle Warren and told his wife he was going to be a very important man. Despite losing that family, he created a new one, building compounds, convincing members to follow him, to give up not only their possessions, but their children, to become Bateman's child brides. Within 2 years, Bateman's flock grew to more than 50 members, with the FBI saying Bateman amassed more than 20 wives, half of them underage.
I heard about some of the rumors that he had 9-year-old brides.
The allegations are beyond disturbing. Bateman is accused of not only forcing girls to marry him, but the FBI says he sexually abused them while forcing other girls to watch and participate. And when the girls fought back, records show he said it was God's will, threatening banishment from heaven for any who were not obedient to his will.
I do think he is a cookie cutter of Warren. He did almost the same thing that Warren was doing.
Brielle believes one reason why Bateman was able to gain this control over so many goes back to his relationship with Warren Jeffs.
He most likely was in the elite groups, or he wouldn't have carried on those things, and people wouldn't have followed him as easy.
Bateman, his child brides, and followers all moved back to Colorado City in 2021, living in multiple compounds including this one.
Okay, yeah, so Samuel Bateman here.
Posting motivational videos to his YouTube channel and starting his own real estate consulting business.
I'm being mentored by multimillionaires and billionaires.
But law enforcement says it was his followers who propped up their leader's lifestyle, buying him Bentleys that were seen driving through Colorado City, raising suspicion from those in town, like Hilldale Mayor Donia Jessup.
Anybody that knew anything about it was reporting to the correct institute that they should have been reporting to.
Records show child safety workers did come to investigate, but were turned away from his followers, leaving him free until August 2022, when a DPS trooper pulled over Bateman in Flagstaff after calls about kids in the trailer.
Saw fingers poking out of the trailer.
Body camera footage shows 3 young girls walk out.
How old are you? 14. How old are you? 11? How old are you? 12?
Then one of the officers noticed.
14-year-old, she had a ring on her finger, on her ring finger. They've all kind of like hidden those. I mean, we know what's going on here.
Explain to me what's going on.
Calm down first.
This arrest, the beginning of Bateman's downfall.
Put your hands behind your back.
While behind bars, Bateman told followers to delete accounts, messages, and even shred diaries, leading to an FBI raid at his Colorado City compounds just a few weeks later.
All I can remember is hearing a lot of sirens and seeing police up and down the street.
Bateman will go on trial next year for sex crimes against children. Several of his followers and wives also facing charges. At this green-colored compound, the trailer sits empty. The child brides gone. And while no one answered the door, we saw 2 van loads of people leaving the compound. The home and his followers still active.
We weren't able to talk to anyone who supports or said they still follow Bateman while in Colorado City, Arizona and Hilldale, Utah, but I have been covering this case as it plays out in federal court, and we were able to speak to some followers there. They didn't want to speak to me on camera, but they did say that this case all revolves around religious persecution.
Yeah, this is such a disturbing story, Chase, but the town used to totally be controlled by Warren Jeffs. How much pull, though, did Samuel Bateman have?
Well, after, Warren Jeffs went to prison, his following broke into factions. We understand Bateman was a leader of one of those factions. He seems to have had control over his followers, but in the broader community has seen a lot of changes since Jeffs was arrested and the government reform. We know some people living in Short Creek Valley actually reported Bateman to police and even DCS before he was ultimately arrested.
It's still hard to believe that this could happen in America. I mean, much less Arizona, but that it could happen in America. And Chase, you mentioned the overhaul that came after the Department of Justice broke up the police department there that was handpicked by Warren Jeffs. Let's continue our coverage now. 12 News journalist Joe Dana covered that trial and joins us now with more. Joe?
You said it, Mark. Just hard to believe it all happened here and continues to on some level. So as Chase said, this story dates back really decades. Allegations coming out of the community became more and more sinister and disturbing, particularly once Warren Jeffs took control. In 2016, a jury in federal court found that the towns of Colorado City and Hilldale engaged in a, quote, decades-long pattern or practice of police misconduct and housing discrimination. The fallout of all of this? Reform and reparations. Jeff's former wives would receive some of the property and financial compensation. The main compound was given to Jeff's 65th wife. She converted it into a place for help. I visited that compound back in 2018.
The motto is prominently displayed, "Pray and Obey," a reminder of a manipulative and dark era. On these grounds, Warren Jeffs rotated in 20 to 30 wives and their children to live with him. So much damage done. But now this place will be a community center for social services. It's the 65th wife of Warren Jeffs making it possible. After Jeffs' conviction, a court gave Brielle Decker the keys to the kingdom, ownership of this entire property. The main house alone, 3 stories and more than 10 times bigger than an average family home at 27,000 square feet. The 2 smaller homes, also massive in their own right. Altogether, they make up 50 bedrooms, 3 industrial kitchens, and 10 great rooms. Brielle searched for a charity to put the complex to good use.
So, Joe, lots of reason for hope. I think everyone probably wants to see this healing to take place up there.
Sure.
But so much damage has already been done.
Absolutely. And One of the most tragic stories that I covered over the last 2 decades when you talk about the damage is the story of the Lost Boys. It sounds disturbing, but a polygamous community does not work simply because of the math. There are not enough females for males who want to marry. And so right around 2003 or 4, Warren Jeffs saw tons of teenage boys about to become men and realized he needed to purge them, more than 200. And they ended up homeless, and families completely disowned them. The women and children were told, don't ever speak to them again. And so these boys ended up in places like Nevada and St. George and Salt Lake City and Phoenix. And I met with some of them over the years, and they have lives filled with homelessness, drugs, in shelters, many of them exploited sexually. Just terrible and so sad. Now they would be in their mid-30s, and there's still a lot of work being done to try to support them, give them structure. There are some good nonprofits out there that are helping the Lost Boys of Colorado City.
Hard to believe that faith could surpass a family's love for a child.
Yeah, and some will say, they would say it's not so much faith, it is a dogma. And that was the problem, right? I think because faith has one connotation, a dogma or a cult obviously has a different.
Yeah, and this is probably the latter of the two.
Yeah.
Joe, thanks. Coming up next in this special report, Jeff's 65th wife now helping others escape.
So I was kind of just trapped within the walls in my own community.
We'll see what the Dream Center looks like today. That's next. Welcome back as we continue this special report, A Prophet, a Predator. We're revisiting the town of Colorado City, once controlled by cult leader Warren Jeffs.
One of the heroes who's emerged from this heartbreaking story is the 65th wife of Jeff's. Once a victim, she now leads an effort to provide housing and services. She showed 12 News journalist Chase Golightly what the sprawling compound is like today.
Massive homes are spread throughout Colorado City, Arizona, and Hilldale, Utah, surrounded by towering walls to keep people from looking in. This one,
The house is 45 rooms.
we were invited into. A 28,000 square foot house where an infamous polygamous FLDS prophet ruled.
So this was Warren Jeffs' house.
Warren Jeffs' new home is a Texas prison after he was sentenced to life behind bars for sex crimes against children. The self-proclaimed prophet had more than 70 wives who all lived here, including Brielle Decker.
I was the 65th wife of Warren Jeffs.
Brielle was raised in the FLDS religion, having 13 siblings and 2 mothers, one of her older sisters marrying Jeff's father, Rulin, who was the prophet at the time. She first met Warren while attending the Alta Academy in Salt Lake City, a school just for those in the religion.
So he was my principal all my childhood, clear up till 6th grade. My first grade teacher was his first wife.
Growing up, the rules were simple. Do as the prophet commanded.
Well, the grooming process was pretty intense for me. If you dated, it was actually worthy of blood atonement. Like, it was a serious crime.
Brielle said she played the part she was told, but it didn't stop bullying from her siblings and abuse from those in the community.
I had at least 60 abusers.
At 16, she and her family moved to Colorado City like so many. When Rulin Jeffs passed away in 2002, Warren became the prophet and started taking dozens of wives, including Brielle, right after she turned 18.
I was actually terrified of the whole situation, and I think he picked up on it.
Brielle said after the secret wedding ceremony, the sexual abuse by Jeffs began with no escape.
So I was kind of just trapped within the walls in my own community.
She witnessed Warren breaking families apart and even married children as young as 12 years old.
I was just so angry.
Then when Jeffs was arrested, Brielle made the decision to leave, jumping out of her bedroom window and ran as far as she could. Anything to get away from the abuse she endured her whole life.
You know, it's amazing that I even survived that.
Now, 17 years later, Brielle is married again, living in Hilldale, Utah, and advocating for others who want to leave the church, working for a nonprofit located in the very home where she was abused. In 2017, she was awarded Warren's compound and helped transform it into the Short Creek Dream Center that houses and provides services to those wanting to start over like she did.
They have to learn to cope. So they definitely need the help, but to admit it is another thing.
During this interview, we could hear children running and playing in the room right above us. 45 rooms, that are always filled.
Fill it to capacity for the last 3 years, yeah, it's quite a bit of people.
The home that once trapped Brielle inside, now helping others get out.
And aside from providing social services and shelter, this center is being used, Joe, in ways that maybe aren't as obvious.
Yeah, it's really a very lively community center. When I was there, we saw tons of kids on a volleyball night playing outside, and others inside on video games, big potluck community dinner. And this used to be a place that was so prohibited, and you had to be one of the chosen ones to be there. So, you would talk to some of these community members, and they would just say, it's still surreal that I'm able to stand in this room, on this carpet where Warren Jeffs used to be. It's been completely transformed.
But they're still trying to make some changes. I mean, in all the photos that you see about this home, there's a massive chimney that says pray and obey on it. They're telling me that they're trying to either take down the chimney or just take down that wording. They're really trying to move past the past that happened in that building.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those of us on the outside, Joe, it may be really difficult to understand, but why is it so hard for these followers of the church to get out?
Well, and some of them don't want to. Some of those who do, for example, integrate themselves in the community or go to these community nights, they're still in the FLDS church. And we have to remember, they have a sense of belonging that really goes back generations. People who study cults will tell you, yes, there's mind conditioning involved. It's the information you're exposed to on a daily basis. But many will never leave, period, because it is their heritage. There is also an effort there to actually support those people who want to stay. Take a look.
This is what change looks like. 2 members of the FLDS religion braiding the hair of Christian missionaries from Mississippi and Kuwait. This secluded community that once resented outsiders now makes room for humanitarian and religious groups. Even the news media.
How are you? Hi. My name's Joe.
Norma Richter holds a weekly fair to earn money, with her spiritual leader Warren Jeffs in prison on sexual assault convictions for marrying 2 girls, the youngest just 12 years old, and with thousands leaving the community and the faith. These are tough times for the faithful.
There's no support system for me. I mean, very little.
We love you.
From behind bars at a Texas state prison, Jeffs still communicates with his followers.
I love all of you. I know that means I need to do better.
Jeff's commands make life only harder. He's reassigned children and wives to other men, tearing apart families, and ordered married couples not to have sexual relations at all, a punishment he says is a result of them not being righteous enough.
This is homemade right here.
And he orders followers living in Short Creek not to do business with so-called apostates, only worsening an ongoing battle over who deserves homes and properties.
Well, this is our sacred land. We're not going to violate what we feel like is sacred to us into a place that's been evicted and work for someone that took it.
You got 2 different factions fighting each other, and they ain't going to cooperate.
And most of that video you saw there from 2018, I can tell you that nonprofit is still there today. They are providing support for people who remain part of the FLDS church.
Coming up next in our special report.
Always be a part of our history. It's what made us.
New leadership turning to a new future.
It made me be the strong, independent woman I am, because I will never be under that again.
Welcome back as we continue our special report, A Prophet, a Predator. We're examining the rise to power for suspected polygamous leader Samuel Bateman, accused of taking and abusing child brides in Colorado City, Arizona.
It is the same community once known as the epicenter for the FLDS Church, a polygamous sect formerly headed by Warren Jeffs, who is now imprisoned for life for taking more than 70 wives and abusing children. 12 News journalist Chase Golightly traveled back to Short Creek Valley earlier this year to talk to the mayors about overcoming the community's troubling history.
Short Creek Valley, home to Colorado City, Arizona, and Hilldale, Utah, surrounded by beautiful mountains and sweeping valleys, have the same problems as any other in the Southwest.
Water is always an issue.
That's one of the big things we're working on, the affordable housing.
But Mayors Dania Jessup and Howard Ream also have to deal with their history.
You know, Colorado City has had a lot of bad press throughout the years.
A place where the polygamous FLDS church dominated for decades, with self-proclaimed prophet Warren Jeffs at the helm.
It's always been such a curiosity. Don't go out there. They're weird. They're polygamists.
Those outside the religion, not welcome here. but so much has changed since then.
The community is kind of going through a transformation, and I wanted to be a part of what the future looked like.
We're very forward focused.
For Mayor Jessup, she was a product of the FLDS.
I was born and raised in Hilldale, grew up with 2 moms and a dad, and 26 siblings.
Jessup seeing the tyrannical reign of Warren Jeffs firsthand.
He controlled our homes. He could tell us, you don't live there anymore, somebody else does. The police force that had been here had been led by Warren Jeffs and been obedient to Warren Jeffs.
Jessup left the church and started her own family. Wanting to create change from within, she ran for mayor in 2017 and won, becoming the first woman mayor in Hilldale, creating backlash from those who didn't want change.
When I took office, the staff walked out and the boards walked out, stating that they could not serve under a woman or for an apostate.
For her, it was an opportunity.
And so that worked out well. I was able to replace people as needed and fill the seats on the boards from people that were in the community.
Members of the FLDS still live here, but the voters show they want change.
It's really about diversity. It's about inclusivity. You know, we want to include everybody.
And you can see it throughout the town. The first brewery opened in 2017, right around the time the Department of Justice overhauled the police force.
The police department was part of the problem. Now the police department has become part of the solution.
Some of the changes you can't actually see, but they make a big difference for the families living in these homes. Homes they now own instead of the church. And the church itself, where Jeffs would preach to thousands of FLDS members, a place where families were broken apart and suffered abuse.
And it is being completely taken apart
to become a new community center. And these changes are bringing families back home.
I wanted people that had been kicked out by Warren, been driven away, to feel like they could come home now.
There's still much to accomplish.
There's still a great mistrust of government.
Jessup says it's going to take time, but because of what these towns went through, the path forward is clear.
It'll always be a part of our history. It's what made us. It created me. It made me be the strong, independent woman I am, because I will never be under that again.
Changing the mindset of Short Creek to welcome anyone.
Guys, the mayors in these towns are really trying to open it up, but overcoming the history is not easy, maybe not even possible. A case like Samuel Bateman's puts a spotlight back on the community where he still has followers to this day.
Well, let's at least try to end this, Joe, on a hopeful note. You saw good things happening in the Short Creek area. It's even a place to visit now.
It is. It's an incredible spot in the country. It really is. And when we were there, we stayed in an Airbnb that used to be one of the massive houses that Warren Jeffs controlled. Right now, there are Airbnbs that you can go online and find, and you can stay there. There's bed and breakfasts, and women who grew up being told that their only role in life would be a mother and wife. They're business owners. They're taking control of their destinies there. And so some great things happening, and it is a place to visit. If you want an interesting road trip, I would say Short Creek area is one place to go, and I'm sure you would agree.
Definitely, it was beautiful. It was picturesque, and also just talking about just how much of the growth. I mean, they just recently had their first female police officer, which I know kind of sounds strange, but just seeing the progress after just even 10 or 15 years ago, that progress is continuing, and they don't plan on stopping.
All right, well, that is all good to hear, guys. Chase, Joe, thank you so much for this very important reporting.